We're here because free speech is under attack. We're here because people are being convinced that socialism works. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup. This is the raw, naked truth.
The Fed backs more interest rate hikes. Biden stands by NATO. Mortgage rates climb higher and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lupkin, and here's the news you need to know. President Biden met with allies in Poland on Wednesday and promised that the United States would defend literally every inch of NATO if Russia attacked any of its members. Biden made the comment as he discussed a united response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine with the Western military alliance's easternmost neighbors, who are closest to the conflict and to Russia. China's top diplomat Wang Yi met with Russian President Vladimir Putin ahead of Friday's anniversary of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Wang touted his country's strong relationship with Moscow, saying the allies would not be overpowered by other nations. China has maintained neutrality in the Ukraine war while providing Russia with diplomatic support. That may be about to change, as intelligence reports state that China is about to start providing Russia with lethal aid. Nearly all Federal Reserve officials backed a quarter-point interest rate hike at the central bank's last policy meeting, marking a slower pace of their effort to raise borrowing costs as inflation showed signs of slowing, according to minutes released on Wednesday. They said prices were still rising too fast, so continuing rate increases would be necessary to bring inflation closer to the Fed's 2% target. Many officials said at the January 31st, February 1st meeting that the slower pace of rate increases would give the Fed time to better determine the extent of its next increases, although a few officials leaned towards a bigger 0.5% increase. NPR is laying off 10% of its staff to cut costs due to a $30 million deficit in its budget. The nonprofit public radio network's chief executive, John Lansing, said in an email to employees obtained by the New York Times. The move is necessary because NPR's financial outlook has darkened considerably over recent weeks. Lansing said the global economy remains uncertain. As a result, the ad industry has weakened, and we are grappling with a sharp decline in our revenues from corporate sponsors. NPR, which employs about 1,100 people, has already cut expenses by $14 million by eliminating open positions and non-essential travel and suspending internships. The average interest rate on the popular 30-year fixed-rate mortgage rose last week by 23 basis points to 6.62%, the highest since November, according to data from the Mortgage Bankers Association. The surge came as bond markets were rattled by increasing fears that the Federal Reserve will have to raise its benchmark interest rate higher and longer than previously expected as the economy slows, but inflation remains much higher than the central bank wants. Mortgage rates jumped above 7% in October as the Fed raised rates in 2022 at the fastest pace in 40 years. Mortgage rates retreated slightly early this year as data indicated inflation was slowing, but they started heading back up in recent weeks. California's budget deficit may be billions of dollars larger than the already big number predicted by Governor Gavin Newsom, raising concerns about the Golden State's fiscal future. Last month, Newsom announced that California faces a projected budget deficit of $22.5 billion for the coming fiscal year. The figure represented a striking downturn from last year, when the state enjoyed a surplus of about $100 billion due to federal COVID relief and surging capital gains. While the predicted year-to-year drop-off seemed large, it may not have been large enough. The California Legislative Analyst's Office, a government agency that analyzes the budget for the state legislature, estimates in a report published last week that Newsom's forecast undershot the mark by about $7 billion, thanks to about $10 billion less in tax revenues than what he predicted. Walmart reported strong fourth quarter 2022 sales and profits, but its second straight decline in annual profit. The retail giant also projected a slow rebound in 2023 from last year's setbacks. Walmart warned that annual adjusted earnings could drop to $5.90 per share, considerably lower than the $6.53 per share that Wall Street had predicted. The company last year took a hit when consumer demand for apparel, home goods, and other general merchandise softened. This year, it is benefiting from strong grocery sales and increasing market share as inflation-wary shoppers, even those with higher incomes, turn to stores like Walmart that offer lower prices. The Department of Education proposed to eliminate a rule that requires officials to withdraw federal support for colleges and universities that restrict the activities of religious organizations on campus, calling it ineffective and unduly burdensome. That rule was the result of a 2019 executive order from then-President Trump improving free inquiry, transparency, and accountability at colleges and universities. It was developed under Trump's Department of Education and took effect in November 2020. Among other things, it set up a system allowing the federal government to deny grants to institutions of higher education if they put limits on the activities of religious student organizations. This decision by the Department of Education comes as religious organizations are under attack by higher education institutions. That's the Raw Naked Truth. You can catch every episode of The Raw Naked Truth at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.